Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It's definitely been a while since I've gone live, but I wanted to go live to kind of just get this out of the way because this was my first year on this channel ever during football season since this channel has been active in 20, I think 18 is when I created this channel where I didn't do Ravens weekly recaps. And the reason I did that was because one, it put a lot of stress on me to, kind of just go through the game whether we win or lose because when you lose you're going to be in a worse mood than if you win. And plus, it was just hindering me being around family and friends where I would watch the game. Say I'd go over to my friend's house and watch the game, then like 10 minutes after the game's over I would have to want to leave and go do the recap and not spend time with my friend. And that was something that I was like, no, I can't keep doing that. So I've kind of been keeping tabs with you on my community page about the season and the way it's going and what I've been thinking overall. And I figured now that the regular season's officially over and the Ravens are headed to the playoffs, why don't we talk about this season in general? Because it it got off to a rough start. It did not start well. I mean, when you start 0-2, no matter how good or bad you're expected to be, it's never fun. I mean, losing to the Chiefs in the season opener, the NFL kickoff game, is one thing. We lost 27-20, and Isaiah Likely's toe touched out of bounds. We would have got the touchdown, and we were going to go for two to try to win that game anyway. So who knows if we would have got the 2-point conversion or whatever. But we outplayed the Chiefs. It's just we made our mistakes, shot ourselves in the foot, as we pretty much did in all of our losses. But the one that surprised me the most, there's two losses really this year that surprised me the most. Obviously, week two, our home opener against the Raiders, we were holding them to field goals the whole game. We were up 16-6, and we lose the game 26-23 to Gardner Minshew and whatever because, I mean, I don't know. Apparently, Gardner Minshew's like a, a tough quarterback to play. He was one of the worst starting QBs in the league this year. So that was surprising in itself. Because I remember going into that game against the Cowboys thinking, like they've been giving up points, but at the same point in time, this just seems like a game that the Cowboys would win. And obviously we got up 28-6. We won 28-25, but here you're still thinking like it's a win, but it was still like I wasn't really necessarily fully happy about it. But then you started seeing us get on a roll. The offense started figuring itself out. We finally were figuring out, the comfortability with Derrick Henry. We bashed the Buffalo Bills in week 4. Those two games against the Bengals, I don't even want to recap those because those were, I mean, that was just Lamar Jackson and Joe Burrow doing their thing. They're going to do that for a while. I mean, we won in Cincinnati in overtime, 41-38. Mainly because Lamar Jackson just kept throwing darts, and the Bengals holder, their punter, couldn't hold a snap in overtime when all they needed was a field goal to win, causing McPherson to miss the kick. And then we made the kick with Justin Tucker, which we'll talk about him later. We beat the Commanders, beat the Buccaneers. Those are two playoff teams, or at least potential, because the Bucs haven't clinched yet, but I'm expecting them to beat the Saints today. Then we go into week 8. We're in a 5-game win streak. We're 5-2. We're taking on a 1-6 Browns team that hadn't put up 20 points in a game at all that season. Now, we're not seeing Deshaun Watson because he got hurt, but we're seeing Jameis Winston, who, yes, was probably the better option for Cleveland the whole year, but you know how erratic he can be. Well, of course, he goes off. We lose 29-24, and that was really the last loss that surprised me because of the team we lost to. We rebounded, beating Denver 41-10 the next week. Obviously, we don't usually let rookie QBs beat us in Baltimore, and that was still the case. And then we have a short week Thursday night against the Bengals. As I mentioned, that game was also crazy. We came back from 21-7 down to win 35-34 in a game where Lamar and Joe Burrow just went off. And this is kind of where I want to, start with the recap. We were 7-3 through 10 games, but it wasn't really pretty because you look outside of 2 games during that 10-game stretch, we gave up 20 or more points in all of them. The only 2 we didn't was when we beat the Bills 35-10 and when we beat the Broncos 41-10. Those were really the only 2 times we came out swinging defensively. I mean, it was kind of confusing considering our offense or defense had been so good last year. I get it, you lose Mike McDonald and Zach Orr's trying to figure things out. But I told people too, I said, this is kind of reminding me a lot of 2022, which was Mike McDonald's first year as our defensive coordinator, where through like the first 8 weeks of the season, the defense was not necessarily terrible, but mediocre at best, and was blowing leads and whatnot. And I said, with Zach Orr, it looks like it's trending to where things could turn around. And lo and behold, we play the well, hold on, I'll get to that in a minute too. Because you look at the passing yards per game we allowed through the first 10 games: Chiefs 281, Raiders 233. Then we allowed 361 to the Cowboys, 155 to the Bills. That was one of the couple times we were actually good against the pass in the first 10 games. 371 against the Bengals, 253 against the Commanders, 356 against the Bucks, 321 against the Browns, and then against the Broncos we allowed 197, and then 421 versus the Bengals. But then when you start getting to week 11, you start seeing things change about the defense. I think what I liked was, even though we have veterans like Marcus Williams and Eddie Jackson on the team, we weren't scared to be like, you know what, you guys aren't cutting it. We need to make changes. So we put Kyle Hamilton back at the strong safety thing rather than having him do the safety linebacker hybrid. We put a Darius Washington in at free safety. And that's when things started to change. That first Steelers game in particular, yeah, we lost the game, but it was 18-16. We didn't allow a single touchdown in that game, 6 Chris Boswell field goals. And if Justin Tucker makes one of the 2 kicks that he missed, then we win that game, not handily, but we win that game because we did outyard the Steelers 329 to 303, but we also turned the ball over 3 times, which was the only game this year where we turned it over multiple times. That was the one thing the offense was good at doing this year. Is I think when you look at it, we turn over, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, that 3 turnover game at Steelers, 9, 10, 11. We only turned it over 11 times offensively all year, with one game where we turned it over multiple times, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 games where we didn't even turn it over at all. The defense didn't force many turnovers. However, toward the end of the year, when they got better, again, they weren't forcing many, but they were definitely, forcing more to happen. I mean, we had 2 pick sixes in the last 4 weeks, Marlon Humphrey against Wilson, and then Nate Wiggins, his first career interception, a pick 6 against Bailey Zappi. So that was cool to see yesterday. And when I mentioned the passing yards, the Ravens being the worst at that for the first 10 weeks, once you get to the Steelers game, that's when you start to see the improvement. When we lost to the Steelers, they had 181 passing yards. The Chargers had 202. The Eagles had 112. Granted, they didn't throw the ball much, but Jalen Hurts wasn't much of a factor in that game. Coming out of the bye, the Giants 181, and then the Steelers again 198, and then the Texans 153, and this is with C.J. Stroud at QB. And then yesterday, the Browns 174. It was like all of a sudden we made that change to a Darius Washington and free safety, and things clicked. I mean, Humphrey and Wiggins, they've been good all year. Humphrey has 6 interceptions this year, which is top 3, 4 in the NFL. He's made the Pro Bowl again. And Nate Wiggins, yeah, he only had the 1 pick, which was the pick 6 yesterday, but he's not one. I said this when we drafted him coming out of college. He's not one to get interceptions. He's just really good at covering people, and we saw that this year. I mean, they targeted him a lot, and he may have given up a couple touchdowns and a couple big plays, but we didn't necessarily hear his name too much. And when you're a corner, that's kind of a good thing, because that means either they're not throwing your way or you're making the plays, and it's just like, cool, you're doing your job. The run defense was stout all year. We had a couple of games where, we let up. I mean, Tampa ran for 125 against us, Denver 122, the Steelers in the second game 122. The Eagles had 140 against us, but that was because they had Saquon. And then the Steelers in the second game had 117. But the fact that 125 yards rushing is the most we allowed in a game all year, I mean, granted, our pass defense was so bad in the first 10 games, teams were probably like, you know what, we shouldn't run the ball against this team. Let's just pass. But The run defense was one thing on the defense that was consistent all year, and that could definitely bode well in the playoffs because we're seeing what happens now when you have a good defense and you start making them one dimensional. Now, if they can't run the ball, but they also can't pass the ball or barely pass the ball, things become, I don't want to say easier defensively, but it definitely makes it a whole new ball game. Now, let's get to some players to talk about. I mean, obviously, there's quite a bit. I mean, I have to start out with Lamar Jackson. I mean, why wouldn't I? 316 out of 474 passing, 66.7 complete percentage, which I believe is his highest in a season, beating last year. And this is what boggles my mind. Okay. 41 passing touchdowns, 4 interceptions. 3 of those weren't even his fault. 2 of them hit off of the receiver's hands, and then the one against the Steelers, not the one that he threw to Minka Fitzpatrick. That was the only one I would say was Lamar's fault. In the first game against the Steelers, I can't remember who caught the ball for us, but he caught the ball. He had both of his elbows down and was touched down. So therefore, he's down. The play should have been over, but because Herbig ripped the ball out of the guy's hands, they said it was a pick. I don't know. I didn't understand that one, but 41 touchdowns to 4 interceptions is ridiculous. I thought 36-6 in his first MVP season was ridiculous. He becomes the first Ravens QB with 40 passing TDs in a year, breaking his own record of 36. And he joins Vinny Testaverde and Joe Flacco as the only quarterbacks to throw for 4,000 yards in a season in Ravens history, as the 4,172 is third most in Ravens history, as Testaverde, I think, had 4,177 in our first year in 1996. And in 2016, Joe Flacco still has the Ravens record with 4,317, all while only being sacked 23 times. Congratulations to the O-line. People might think that's a lot, but when you look it up, it really isn't. Now, granted, Lamar can scramble out of some sack, but whatever. But you got to think where this offensive line was at the beginning of the year. First of all, Joe D'Alessandro, our offensive line coach, passing away in the middle of the preseason. That didn't help either. But the first 2 games of the year, there was a lot of, mixing and matching and trying to figure out what worked. I mean, we had, Tyler Linderbaum, Ronnie Stanley, sure, but the rest was kind of up for grabs. But Rosengardner, Voorhees, they came in and filled roles nicely, and they're young players. One's a rookie. The other one is in his second year, but technically a rookie because he missed his whole rookie season recovering from an ACL injury. So, you got to give it to those two for coming in and just doing an excellent, excellent job. Because, again, I think the 23 sacks might be the least Lamar has been sacked in the season when he's, played a full year. This was also the first year he played in like every game because obviously 2018, he played the second half because Flacco started the first half. 2019, he didn't play in week 17 because we had the 1 seed in division clinch, same with last year. And in 2021 and in 2022, he was hurt. 2020, he missed the game because of he had COVID. So this is his first time playing every single game. And I don't care what people say, he's got to win his third MVP. I get it too. I'm not going to sit here and say Josh Allen doesn't deserve it. He's had a good season as well. But, he has a lot more rushing touchdowns because when they get to the 1 or 2 yard line, the Bills just spam him when they're not handing off to James Cook. And, sure, he doesn't have a lot of weapons. But the thing with Lamar is when you look at what he's doing, these people who say he can't pass are the ones that say he's not going to win MVP when he has showed you, obviously, having his best statistical season passing, one of the best offensive passing seasons ever, and yet he's not the MVP because, Derrick Henry was that in the offseason. Now, don't get me wrong, Derrick Henry did a lot for this offense, but let's be honest too, Derrick Henry had a down year last year before coming back to Baltimore, so Henry found himself in the right situation. I said it before. We're either going to get Barkley or Henry, and I'm okay with either one. And look at both of them, number 1 and number 2 in rushing. As Henry came so close to 2,000 yards. He had 1,921, the second most in Ravens history. 16 rushing touchdowns, led the league. He also set a Ravens record for rushing TDs. Lamar Jackson, 915 rushing yards himself. That's his most he's had in a while, but I believe his 139 rushes are his least because he only had 4 rushing TDs too, which again, I believe is his lowest for any season. But when you have Derrick Henry, why would you even want Lamar to do whatever? Because I think all of his TD runs, Lamar's, were like 10 yards or longer. It wasn't like when, with Greg Roman where we were getting to the 5 yard line and we're like, Lamar, take it, take it, take it. Outside of that, yeah, Justice Hill was fine. I mean, he only carried it 47 times, but he averaged 5 yards a carry, had a rushing touchdown. It was more the pass game that he was good in, 42 catches, 383, and three TDs there. And Mitchell and Ali came in toward the end of the year. They didn't get much rushing attempts or receiving attempts. I do hear that we're going to be using Keaton Mitchell a little bit more in the playoffs because he only played 5 games because of injury. But they stepped in the last couple of games with Justice Hill under concussion protocol. But that was that. This year was so crazy too. We, for the first time in our history, have a Pro Bowl wide receiver, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, obviously, that's been the one position in our history that I would say is not fantastic. I mean, we were always good at bringing veterans in and having them succeed, like, Quadra Ishmael, Derek Mason, Steve Smith Sr., Anquan Bolden. And I mean, even Torrey Smith, he was the only receiver before Hollywood Brown that we had who had 1,000 yards that we had drafted. But Zay Flowers hits 1,000 yards for the first time. He is a Pro Bowler. 74 catches, 1,059 yards, only 4 TDs. But again, I don't necessarily think he's the goal line guy. I mean, he'll get them every so often. It is kind of upsetting. Now, his injury that he got yesterday, apparently it's not serious. He might miss the wild card game. So thank goodness that it's not any, because when he went down holding his knee, I thought the worst. I didn't see the cart come out. I saw him get up and walking, and they said the worst that might happen is he misses the wild card game, which sucks. But I think with some of these other guys, they can fill the void because Rashad Bateman. Let's talk about him because I don't think he's getting enough love for what he did this year. Because when you look at his stats overall, you're gonna be like, yeah, they're not necessarily like fantastic stats, but considering where he was heading into this year, where it was kind of like, okay, we're going to sign that fifth year option, but you got to prove yourself. You got to stay healthy, and you got to prove that you can be, how do I put it, versatile. 45 catches, 756 yards. But the thing that gets me is 9 touchdowns. What this kind of reminds me of is when we had Anquan Bolden, where he wouldn't necessarily put up big numbers because I don't think Bolden had more than 65 catches and like 920 yards with the Ravens. He never had a 1,000-yard season with the Ravens, but he was just that guy that you would go to when you were trying to throw a jump ball in the end zone or just a jump ball in general. Like, he was aggressive this year. He made some contested catches and he didn't drop passes, which I know in his first couple of years that was kind of like a concern, but he looked great. Mark Andrews, I remember the first 6 weeks of the season. Mark Andrews, there were people were like, oh my God, he doesn't have a touchdown catch. Well, somehow, some way he finished with the team lead 11 because 55 catches, 673 yards. That's got to be his lowest total in a while in a full season. But what I like about this year is that with all the weapons we have, we weren't trying to force feed guys like Andrews and Flowers. It was, oh, you're open, I'm going to throw it to you. Like, we thought we had weapons last year, but this receiving core and these group of weapons are probably better than what we had last year. Because even Isaiah Likely, 42 for 383, 3 touchdowns, or I'm sorry, no, that was Justice Hill. Likely had 42 catches, 477 yards, and 6 touchdowns. So and then of course, you throw in Charlie Kohler had one from your 3 tight ends. That's 18 touchdowns right there. And even our receivers, I mean, our receivers had what? That's 9, 13. Wallace had one that's 14, and 2 by Aguilar, so that's 16. Our receivers had 16 touchdowns. We would be lucky if our receivers could get to 10 total touchdowns over the past couple of years. Oh no, 17. I forgot Devontae Walker caught that one against the Giants. 17. That's his only catch of the year. Even Pat Ricard, he had one this week. And one guy I also like too is Tylan Wallace. Like 11 catches, 193 yards, and a touchdown isn't going to pop off the page or anything. But here's the thing. He had 11 catches on 12 targets. And that only target he didn't make a catch was yesterday. And it was a good defensive play by whoever was covering him. So Tylan Wallace, he's done well when he has stepped up. The return game's been a bit weird. We've had a lot of returners. It started with Hardy and Collier, and then Wallace and Hill, Mitchell, Steven Sims, Rasheen Ali. Desmond King was probably the best one, but he fumbled too much. And you know how former special teams coach John Harbaugh is with fumbles. He will take you out quickly. And John Kelly, who I really don't even remember. So we had a lot of that. I think that was very inconsistent, but there really are not a lot of, or a lot of teams kind of deal with this nowadays. There's only so many like solid returners. Wallace needs more playing time. He's definitely, well, he might in the wild card game. because after Flowers went out, he came out as the slot number three wide receiver, or he might have even been the number two because I don't even think Aguilar was out there that much. So we might be seeing Tylan Wallace more this week if Flowers doesn't play. Time for us to end the Steelers narrative for the remainder of the Jackson era blowout incoming. Well, until we officially play the Steelers, until that's officially said, I'm not going to say we play the Steelers because we're still playing either the Chargers or Steelers. Because I mean, I don't know what the Chargers plan to do. Are they going to rest their starters against the Raiders? If they do, that's a possibility that they could lose and we end up playing them. Because if the Chargers lose, we will play them and the Steelers will go to Houston. But if the Chargers, whether they rest their starters or play their starters and beat the Raiders, then yes, we will play the Steelers in Baltimore. Which would be the fifth time we would meet up in the playoffs and the first time in Baltimore. So that'll be pretty cool to see. He's not as fast, but yeah. Wallace is not a speedster. I don't think he ever really was, but he's got good hands. I do think though he had that. What was that touchdown? It was the Bengals game, the second one. It was like 80 something yards. Where is it at here? I'm trying to look at what his long was. Oh, that's the targets. His long was. It doesn't say it on here. Hold on. I'm new to this whole pro football reference thing. It's kind of they changed it up a little bit. Now it looks a little bit different. But yeah, he had like an 80-yard TD against the Bengals where he like broke free and then just kept going. It was 84. Yeah, it was 84. I knew we were inside the 20-yard line. And that was changed the complexity of the game because that made it 21-20. Tucker missed the extra point, which I guess we can get into talking about him now. I do like the way he finished the season. I think that's good heading into the playoffs. He didn't miss an extra point. He didn't miss a field goal, and he made 2 or 3 field goals from 50 plus after the bye week. Because 22 out of 30, I mean, the 8 misses is field goal wise is the most he's missed in his career. He did have a long of 56 though. He kicked a lot from 50 yards. He kicked 11 field goals from 50 yards this year, made 6 of them. He was also 60 out of 62 in extra points. I think they said the 10 total missed kicks was the most he's had. But I believe one of those missed extra points. I know the one was against the Bengals. The other one I can't. Oh, it was the Eagles. It was the Eagles after our first TD. He missed that one. But, like I said, it was one of those things where I didn't think the Ravens were going to cut him because of what he's done. I just think he had some sort of, what you call in sports the yips. And like I said, during the bye week, he seemed to fix whatever was going on. And now he's red hot going into the playoffs. So I don't think Justin Tucker is washed yet. Okay. We'll see what happens next year. If he comes out and struggles again next year at age 36, I might start going, okay, it might be time to think about getting rid of him. But this is his first bad. I would say 2015. I remember him missing 7 field goals. This is like his first really bad year in a while. So we'll see if it's a case of father time is getting to him, or if it was just a bad season because players, even some of the best, have some bad seasons. Jordan Stout, 55 punts. Obviously didn't have to punt much because, well, we put up 518 points, which, by the way, second time we put up over 500 points in our history. Although, if I go to 2019, I think, was it 500? Yeah, it was 531. So we were 14 shy of breaking the team record. And yet we did lead the league in scoring that year. This year we were third because there's a lot of teams that just came out and scored points. One thing I'm impressed with the defense was for a while through those first 10 games, we were 26th out of 32 in points allowed. Somehow, some way, we finished 10th in the league in points allowed at 361. So that just goes to show you how good this defense has been playing the last, 6 weeks. Yeah, because like I said, it was the first Steelers game where they went from, close to dead last in scoring defense to top 10 in that category. Defense-wise, you know what? Maybe we had more of a pass rush than I thought because, good Lord, Kyle Van Noy, 12.5 sacks, already broke his career high of 9.5, which he had last year. Odafe Owe, 10 sacks. He hit the double-digit sack mark yesterday. All this while Justin Madubuike, who signed that long-term extension, only had 6.5, which is still good for an interior D lineman. But, I mean, I was kind of looking at it and being like, okay, Van Noy's good, but he's getting older. And Madubuike, he had a good year. And Owe, he still has yet to prove himself. But those guys stepped up as we had 54 sacks, which keep in mind we had 60 last year. So 54 is still pretty impressive for what we had because I thought we had gotten worse in the pass rushing category. Turns out we did not because we also had guys like, Roquan Smith had a second half, Travis Jones had one, Trenton Simpson a second half, and Darius Washington one. Malik Harrison had two. Even Tavis Robinson had 3.5 sacks. Broderick Washington had two. Pierce had two. And oh my goodness, Michael Pierce, congratulations, man. Because I think yesterday, when we were up 35-10 late in the game, we were doing what the Lions did when they blow out opponents, where they're like, let's just bullshit around. Let's do this. Because I don't know why, and I'm not complaining about it because of what happened. I want to know, John Harbaugh, why did you have the 355-pound Michael Pierce playing zone coverage? And then to top things off, he makes the interception. Like, when I saw that was Michael Pierce that picked the ball off while being in zone coverage, I was like, what the hell just happened? I wish he would have ran it more. I wanted to see how far he could get, but he kind of, took the knee down and we won the game anyway. So it wasn't that big of a deal. We were up by 25. But when I saw that, I was like, there is no way we just put him out in coverage like that. And we did. But you know what? Hey, Michael Pierce, I'm just glad you caught it because a lot of those like defensive tackles, nose tackles, when they see the ball coming toward their hands, they usually don't catch it. So good job on you. But yeah, 54 sacks by the defense. I don't know if that leads the league like it did last year, but like I said, it's only 6 less than what we had a year ago. So that's still pretty good. Matabike's Baltimore's Aaron Donald. He'll get double digits next year after the Super Bowl win. I mean, yeah, like I said, Matabike, the only reason I think he got 6.5 was because he was getting doubled up a lot because I think people thought we didn't have as strong of a pass rush. So that opened up Van Noy and Owe a little bit more. So again, shout out to them for both having career years. But, Matabike, like I said, 6.5 sacks for an interior defensive lineman. That's still pretty impressive for what it is. He's not going to get double digit sacks every year, but he could have a good bit of, double digit sacks. I don't think he'll ever have, what did he have last year? Like 14, 15. I don't think he'll ever get like that high again, but he'll have, anywhere between like 7 to 11 probably, every year. Interception wise, Marlon Humphrey had 6. The only other one with multiple was Darius Washington with 2. Obviously, Marlon Humphrey had the pick 6. Roquan Smith had one that was on Mahomes in week 1. Kyle Hamilton had the one against the Texans on Christmas. Nate Wiggins got his first pick yesterday, a pick 6 off of Bailey Zappi. And of course, I just mentioned Michael Pierce. So 12 interceptions. Again, not great, but not bad considering the way the NFL is now, where a lot of these quarterbacks don't necessarily throw a ton of picks. And considering how our pass defense started, I'll take it. You know what? I'll take it. I didn't think we were even going to have 5 interceptions this year, or I'll say like 7 or 8, because I think at one point Marla Humphrey had like our only 4 interceptions. So it was kind of embarrassing for a while, but we figured it out. We definitely figured all that out. But all in all, to say that we started 0-2 and only finished 1 game worse than last year, we were 13-4 last year, and we started 2-0 a year ago. So to start 0-2 and to only finish 1 game worse than we did a year ago, I'll take it, considering we came back and won the division again. We're not the 1 seed, we're the 3 seed, but we still get a home playoff game to start. Whether that is against the Chargers or Steelers, we'll see later today after the Chargers game concludes. Because, like I said, if the Chargers lose, then we are playing the Chargers. If the Chargers win, then we will be playing the Steelers, and I don't know if the Chargers plan on resting starters at all. I don't know what Jim Harbaugh is deciding to do there, because obviously they can't win the West, and they already got a playoff spot clinched, but Jim Harbaugh doesn't seem like the type of guy to me that would rest his starters. And we probably could have had a better record if we didn't let some of these games get away. Like I said, that Raiders game still haunts me. The first game against the Browns, the first game against the Steelers, and even the Eagles. Like I said, if Tucker, against the Eagles too, if Tucker makes one of those 2 field goals that he missed, then that last touchdown we got would have put us up by 1 point with like 6 seconds left. So that probably is a win right there. And like I said, if he makes one of the 2 misses against the Steelers in the first game, we could win that game 19-18, and that would have been, completely fine. But, that's in the past now. Like I said, he's fixed that. Our defense has fixed itself. So I'm really starting to like Zach Orr and the schemes that he's putting together. And Todd Monken, man, he's just been a blessing in disguise. I thought last year was good for the offense. Man, this might be better than the 2019 offense, only because in 2019, yeah, Lamar threw for 3,000 yards. He had 36 TD passes, but we lacked any, outside receiving threat. He wasn't necessarily, a prolific passer yet. And, I mean, obviously we ran the hell of the ball. We still run the hell out of the ball, but now there was a lot of these games this year where we had to trust Lamar to go out and win us the game. I mean, those two Bengals games, we pretty much had to we pretty much had to not necessarily abandon the run, but we had to throw a lot more in those games. And Lamar came through, considering in the second Bengals game, he started off slow and got it done. And then there was the game against the Buccaneers where he had, the 5 touchdowns. He threw for over 300 yards against the Commanders. There was only, I think, I want to say, yeah, because he had the Bills and Cowboys game where he threw for under 200, but he threw it like 31 times combined in those two games. The Chargers game, he was only 16 out of 22 for 177 yards, but he had 3 touchdowns, two on through the air, one on the ground. And when we played the Steelers and Texans, he did have 207 against the Steelers, but against the Texans again, he didn't have to throw it much because we were just running the ball and scoring at will and doing our thing. I would dare say that yesterday wasn't necessarily the worst game Lamar's had all year. I think the first game against the Steelers would basically be the worst game Lamar's had this season. 16 to 32, though. He only completed 50% of his passes, but 217 again with 2 touchdowns and didn't turn the ball over. So still a good day. Plus, we ran for over 100 plus yards in every game, but that second game against the Bengals, because we recovered the onside kick, we took the knee. So we went from 101 rushing yards in that game to 99. So that was the only one this year that we didn't get 100. And we outrushed every single one of our opponents by 50 or more yards, or not 50 or more yards, but we just outrushed our opponents in every single game this year, which I don't know if we've ever done that before. But of course, when you have Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry, then you kind of expect it. I don't know his stats, but he looked pretty awful against Oakland. No, he was. Let me click on that game because I remember it wasn't fantastic, but it wasn't bad against the Raiders, and it's Las Vegas, by the way. I still make that same mistake. Lamar was 21 of 34 for 247 yards, a touchdown interception, 5 carries, 45 yards. And then, like I said, the interception wasn't even his fault. It hit off of Bateman's hands into the defender. So no, I wouldn't say that was terrible. I would say, is it like statistically, like, yes, one of his worst games this year? Yeah, but when you talk about, was it bad? No, it wasn't bad. He was still running for his life because the offensive line hadn't figured itself out yet. We were still figuring out how to use Derrick Henry correctly in this offense. So one of his worst games of the year, yeah, but definitely not, because then when I go to the first, I didn't look it up. That loss just felt awful. Oh no, it was awful, but I don't really blame it on Lamar. I blame it on other things. But if I go to that first game against the Steelers, when I read out his stats, you'd be like, oh yeah, that was definitely his worst game. Yeah, 16 of 33, 207, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Again, not necessarily terrible considering he was playing the Steelers defense, but with what he had been doing up to that point, it wasn't great. He still outpassed Russell Wilson, who had more completions, but Russell Wilson's kind of been Mr. Dink and Dunk for the Steelers lately. Because I would say too, I don't know if he has another well, the Eagles game too. If I go to the Eagles game, it might actually be, oh no, that's better than I thought. 23 of 36, 237, 2 TDs. Okay, so and 8 carries, 79 yards. So he was actually good against the Eagles. It was really just that Steelers game that I remember where I was like, oh, he didn't look like himself in that first Steelers game. Like he looked a lot better in that second Steelers game where he was 15 of 23, threw for 200, 3 touchdowns, had that one bad interception, but that was about it. He didn't run it well, but I mean, Henry ran it very, very well. So Lamar didn't have to run it much anyway in that game. But yeah, I just, this year was this. Oh, and the adversity too. Another thing we had to deal with was the whole Deontay Johnson thing. I don't know why we traded for him in the first place. I mean, I get it. Maybe you were like, okay, Aguilar is not necessarily fully cutting it as a slot guy, so they wanted to get someone who can complement Zay and Bateman well. But I don't know. I feel like there was better options because the Ravens didn't need that kind of diva. if you know what I mean. Like, I get it. We had Steve Smith Sr. before, but he wasn't like a diva to the team. He just trash talked a lot, and you just let it go because he backed it up for the most part. Like, that was just what he was. But Deontay Johnson was driven out of Pittsburgh. They traded him to Carolina for a reason, and the Panthers, who were trying to build a young QB, didn't want him for a reason because he leaves this toxic taste in the locker room. And I know when we saw him on Christmas when he was with the Texans, there was love between him, Lamar, whatever. It might just be between Deontay Johnson and the coaching in the front office. That was a problem. But when I had heard it was the Eagles game that, because it was the game where Bateman got hurt and left the game, Deontay Johnson, like the week before or a couple weeks before, had been complaining, oh, I'm not getting enough playing time. So when he actually has an opportunity to get playing time, he says, oh, I'm not going out there, I'm not playing. So it confused me, like, okay, so then what? Like you sound like Antonio Brown right now. Like, I'm not saying he's as bad as Antonio Brown. It's just Brown would do this weird stuff where you're like, give me the ball. And then when you would try to get him the ball more, he'd be like, oh, well, now I don't want to come in the game because, you guys just, you're not giving me the ball enough. It's like, make up your mind at this point. So the fact that we were able to overcome that, because a lot of teams, especially in our position where we're trying to make the playoffs, win the division, that would kind of get in their way. But John Harbaugh usually doesn't let stuff like that bother us. I mean, you look at the whole Ray Rice thing back in 2014. We were able to go 10-6, make the playoffs then, and we let Justin Forsett run for 1,200 yards. So we've always been pretty good with that in our history with distractions like that. So it wasn't necessarily surprising that we were able to handle Deontay Johnson's situation well. I was just surprised that we had him in the first place because I'm like, you knew what you were getting. But when he was finally having the opportunity to come in and he said no, that's when you realize, like, oh, I see where the Steelers and Panthers are coming from. Like, you should know this, that the Steelers always have diva wide receivers. It does not matter the era. Hines Ward was a diva. Antonio Brown was a diva. George Pickens, currently a diva. Deontay Johnson, a diva. Juju Smith-Schuster with this whole dancing on midfield logos thing and all this, that diva. Like, I wouldn't want a receiver from the Steelers ever again because, like I said, for whatever reason, the Steelers are just attached to these diva wide receivers. I don't get it. I don't know how they do it. I guess because people say Mike Tomlin's too much of a player coach that he lets it slide, which with, like I said, the history of their receivers, I can see why Steelers fans say that. Harbaugh ruined Deontay Johnson's situation, never offered him a good reason for his bench time, and when he finally had no choice but to play him, he said no. Harbaugh pisses fans off too. I mean, does Harbaugh piss fans off sometimes? Yes, but he's still a good coach. And look, I get it that he didn't necessarily offer a good reason why he wasn't getting enough playing time. My guess would be he still wasn't fully acclimated with Lamar in the first place. Because keep in mind, when this situation took place, he'd only been there a couple weeks. And even at that, when Deontay Johnson was on the field, he had one catch, and I remember him dropping a couple passes. So I don't know. I really don't think he would have made a difference whether he played or not. Like, yeah, he definitely could have earned, like Kabizi says here, could have earned that wide receiver 3 job against the Eagles if he did come in for an injured Bateman and do whatever. But I don't know. He just it's one of those situations where no matter what, whether he got playing time or didn't get playing time, I didn't really see him being much of a factor because he had one solid season in Pittsburgh and he thought he was like hot shit. It was the same thing with Juju Smith-Schuster. He had one great season in Pittsburgh, thought he was hot shit, and then we all saw how he turned out to be. And I think Antonio Brown rubbed off on him a little bit because, well, again, Juju Smith-Schuster went from respected being disrespected by Antonio Brown to when Antonio Brown left basically being like the Steelers' sequel to AB. And it's just that whole situation confused me. Tre'Davious White was an interesting acquisition because I've seen him playing, but again, I don't hear his name much, but that could just be a good thing. That probably means he's, locking down his receivers, which is what we want him to do. But yeah, this season, I don't want to say it was like a roller coaster. I mean, if you 0-2 start, yeah, that sucks. But, we started winning. I think it was just more of, the way the defense was playing. You were just kind of like, okay, the offense is doing well, but man, we cannot go to the playoffs with the defense playing like this. But now that the defense is kind of finding itself, it was like, Deontay was the best player on the Panthers. He thought he was coming here to play. I sympathize, but I don't agree with his actions. I don't agree that he's the best player in the Panthers. They have a guy named Chuba Hubbard, who's probably better. That's why he got the extension, and Deontay Johnson got kicked out of Carolina. But I mean, teach his own, I guess. I think that Chuba Hubbard will do more for Bryce Young than Deontay Johnson would have. But again, we'll see. Just Deontay Johnson always seemed like a solid number three receiver to me, but he acts like he's a number one, number two guy, and he's just not. He's not. He's that guy that's going to come out, make a catch or two here or there, or should make a catch or two here or there. But he wants to act like he's Antonio Brown and wants to get the ball a lot. And, I mean, Antonio Brown at least deserved to say, hey, I want the ball because he was so good. But Deontay Johnson hasn't earned that. Like, he's decent, but he hasn't earned the fact that he was like, man, I want the ball this many times. I want you to give me here, here, and here. It's like, dude, just chill out. We'll put you in the game plan, and when we tell you to go out there and play, you go out and play. You don't do what you did. Like, it's just, I think we handled that situation. We could have handled it better, but I think we handled it as well as we could, because like I said, that could have completely broke down the locker room, but it did not. So that is what it is. Anyway, that's basically all I have to say about things. I hope that this is actually our year. It's a great thing because I'm tired of hearing Stevens' name every other play, and I believe Tre'Davious White will be back next year. I don't know. Stevens is an interesting case of, he's solid because there's times where he gets beat, but then there's like times where he's just like locked up on the receiver and the receiver like makes a great catch. Like, it's one of those ones where he's defended it so well that when the receiver makes a catch, you can't be like, oh, well, Stevens should have done more there. Like, he can't. He's literally on the guy. If he does any more, he's going to get called for pass interference, and that's just another thing you don't want. So Stevens is 50-50, but again, that's why we drafted Nate Wiggins, and look at what he's done. He's done very well this year, and Marlon Humphrey seems to be doing just fine, even though he's in his, ninth year already? Good Lord. Marlon Humphrey's been around that long. I remember when we drafted him. But yeah, no, Lamar deserves the MVP. Saquon Barkley is probably going to win Offensive Player of the Year, although I wouldn't be surprised if someone like Derrick Henry came in second, because obviously, again, they're number one, number two in rushing. And this has to be the year, right? This has to be the year we break through and win the Super Bowl. I mean, yeah, last year was good. We had the one seed, but even though the Chiefs are going to be 15-2, 16-1, they're not great. They have major flaws, and we almost beat them in week one. I feel like, again, if we didn't shoot ourselves in the foot, we would have won that game. And outside of that, I would say the only team in the playoffs that could really keep up with us offensively, probably Buffalo. And I know people say, well, we blew them out week four, but that Bills team was looking a lot different. Sure, they were 3-0, but they didn't have Amari Cooper yet. Josh Allen wasn't acclimated with those receivers. So, I think the Bills are the only team where I can say, like, we might have to get into a shootout with them in the playoffs. But the Texans, they're too injured offensively for me to – I mean, we saw what happened on Christmas. The Steelers – they're weird because, like I said, they got that 10-3 record. They're like, okay, we're in the playoffs, and then they've just been playing like crap, especially offensively, the past 4 games. The Chargers, they can get something going offensively, but they're one of those teams, if you hold them under 30 points, you probably will beat them, considering we beat them 30-23 this year. So and they have a good defense. And then I'm trying to think of the other teams that are in the playoffs too. Oh, well, yeah, the Chiefs, like I said, but they've only put up 30 points in a game, once this year. So, their offense isn't as scary as it once was. So, yeah, the only team I can see where I would be like fully worried about is the Bills. I mean, people say the Chiefs because of the whole, thingamajig where they're like, oh, the referee, this and that and the other. But, I think if we can go to Kansas City in the playoffs and beat them, I think that's a possibility. It's more Buffalo where I'm like, oh, because, Josh Allen, he's got a lot of no-name receivers, yes, but he makes it work. He can run the ball. And frankly, the way they were in week 4 to the way they are now, completely different team. I think they've only lost once since week 5. And that was a 44-42 loss to the Rams. So if we play like the Rams did offensively and go neck and neck with them, then we have a good shot at beating the Bills. But all the other teams in the AFC, have their flaws or don't score much. So I mean, this just has to be it. Like, if you win the wild card and then have to go to Buffalo and then get past the Bills, whether you play the Chiefs in the AFC Championship game or not, like if you get past the Bills, I feel like the Ravens will have it this year. I feel that. Like last year it was you get past the Chiefs, but for whatever reason, I'm just thinking to myself, if we win that game or we win the wild card game, Buffalo's probably going to beat whoever, whether it's Miami or Denver. Okay, they could lose to Cincinnati, but I still think that they'll win that game somehow. Then we go to Buffalo, and if you get past the Bills in Buffalo, because it seems like the divisional round for the Bills, outside of one time when they made the AFC Championship game with Josh Allen in 2020, that seems to be their Achilles heel round in the playoffs. If you get past the Bills, then whether you're playing a team like the Chargers or the Chiefs or whoever in the championship game, whether you're at home or on the road, I think that that'll be a path for people to realize like the Ravens are going to go to the Super Bowl because Buffalo's probably the most dangerous team in their way, and really the only other team in the AFC playoffs that can play the Ravens game where they can run the ball well, they can throw the ball when they need to, and they have these playmakers that nobody really talks about too much, but they have guys that can make plays offensively when they need to. The only thing I think we have going for us over the Bills right now that isn't like equal is our defense is playing better. Their defense hasn't really been playing great the whole season, but our defense recently is playing better, and we only gave up 10 points to them in week 4 when our defense wasn't playing great. So again, who knows? But new to your channel, just subbed. Let's go Baltimore. Well, thank you, Raven76B more. I appreciate that. But yeah, so Raven Nation, we're in the playoffs. I mean, we knew that a couple weeks ago when we beat the Steelers. I will be tuning in. I'll be watching Red Zone, but I'll mainly be paying attention to the Chargers Raiders game just to see if it'll be the Chargers or Steelers that we host next week in the wild card game. And after that, who knows? Depending on how far we get in the playoffs, I might talk about it. I might not. If we win the Super Bowl, I will definitely be back with you guys to talk about things. But until then, that's it for me. Stay safe out there, and let's go Ravens.